You felt it before. 5 minutes into a conversation, and nothing was said that you could point to. No insult, no lie you could prove in front of anyone. But something in your chest already made a decision your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Someone asks you a small, harmless question, and the way they wait for your answer feels less like listening and more like being weighed. You laugh it off because you've been trained since childhood to override that first read. To be polite first and accurate second. But the feeling doesn't leave. It just goes quiet and waits to be proven right. Sometimes for months, sometimes for years, sometimes only after real damage has already been done. That feeling has a name, and it has a shape. Carl Jung spent 40 years mapping the country where it lives. Not folklore, not gut instinct dressed up as mysticism, but a structure you can actually learn to see. The same way a sailor learns to read weather in a sky that looks to everyone else standing on the same dock, like any other sky. 3 shapes to be exact: the narcissist, the psychopath, the manipulator. Each one is doing something specific with a part of the mind Jung described in exact detail, decades before anyone coined the phrase dark triad for a psychology paper. Once you understand the mechanism underneath the behavior, you stop needing 5 months of slow-burning damage to know exactly what you're standing in front of. 5 minutes is enough if you know precisely what you're listening for. Stay with this to the end. By the final chapter, you'll have all 3 profiles built in your head permanently, and you will not sit across from a stranger the same way again. Everyone wears one. Jung called it the persona, the Latin word for the mask an actor held up to his face on a Roman stage so the back row could tell, at a glance, which character was speaking. Not a lie, a translation. The self adjusted for the room it happens to be standing in. You have a version of you for your mother, a version for your boss, a version for a stranger beside you on a train who will never see you again and doesn't need the full weight of you to get through the ride. None of these versions are fake. All of them are incomplete, and that's not a flaw in the system. That's the system doing exactly what it was built to do. The healthy version of a mask bends. It answers to something underneath it, the way a coat takes its shape from the body actually wearing it. Jung wrote that the persona is a kind of mask designed to conceal the true nature of the individual. Sit with that phrasing because it's colder than it first sounds. Designed to conceal, not designed to express. Concealment was the job description from the start, built into the blueprint of every polite exchange you've ever had, every introduction, every small talk conversation at a party where nobody says what they actually mean, which means every person you've ever met is already, quietly, in the business of hiding something. That was never in question. The real question, the one that decides whether you're safe or not around someone, was never whether they wear a mask. It's what happens to the thing standing behind it. In most people, the mask is porous. Stand close enough, long enough, and it slips. A laugh that lands half a second too late, a silence that runs 1 beat longer than comfort allows. A flash of something private crossing a face before it catches itself and resumes the performance. You get a glimpse of the actual person, and then the mask goes back on, and life continues. In 3 kinds of people, it doesn't slip. Not once, not across an entire evening, not even when you go looking for the crack on purpose, testing it the way you'd press a thumb into a wall to check if the paint is still wet. Not because they're better performers than the rest of the room, because one of them has too much behind the mask to let it show. One has almost nothing behind it worth finding, and one built the mask specifically so you'd never get the chance to check in the first place. By the end of this, you'll know which is which before they've finished their second sentence. And once you know, you'll wonder how you ever missed it. In 1913, Jung lost the relationship that had defined his entire professional life. Sigmund Freud had been his mentor. His father figure, the man being quietly groomed to inherit the psychoanalytic movement after him. Then Jung published a book, Symbols of Transformation, that broke openly with Freud's theory of the libido, and the friendship didn't survive the disagreement. Jung was pushed out of the inner circle he had helped build with his own hands. Colleagues who owed him professional favors stopped answering his letters within weeks. By every honest account from that period, he was alone, publicly humiliated, and professionally radioactive at the exact moment his career should have been at its peak. What happened next isn't the flattering part of the biography. It's the part most introductions to his books compress into a single cautious paragraph. The way a family rushes past the 1 year nobody wants to bring up at dinner. Jung stopped sleeping the way he used to. He described waking visions arriving uninvited, images with a force behind them that felt closer to intrusion than imagination. Vivid enough, insistent enough, that for a stretch of years he privately questioned his own stability. He would later name that period, without softening the phrase for anyone, a confrontation with the unconscious. Picture it plainly for a second. A respected physician in his late 30s, professionally exiled, sitting alone in a study at night while something in his own mind refuses, flatly, to stay quiet. Most people faced with exactly that do one of two things. They medicate the feeling into silence, or they build a louder, busier persona and hide inside the noise of it until the feeling gives up trying to reach them. Jung did neither. He bought a notebook. Red leather, expensive, the kind of object you buy when you've already decided that whatever comes next is going to matter. For roughly 16 years in a house on the shore of Lake Zurich, in a small town called Küsnacht, he wrote down what surfaced. He drew it in ink and gold leaf. He gave it faces, landscapes, a voice that argued back with him on the page. That notebook became what's now known as the Red Book, kept unpublished until decades after his death, because what's inside it was considered too strange, too personal, too close to evidence of a man talking to something other than himself for a medical career to survive being associated with it. Here's the part worth pausing on, because it's the hinge the entire rest of this video swings on. The Red Book is the record of a person doing, on purpose, with nobody watching and nothing to gain from the performance of it, the one thing a dark triad personality is structurally incapable of doing. He turned around, in the dark, alone, and looked directly at what he didn't want to be. That's the entire difference, not intelligence. Plenty of the people you're about to learn to spot are sharper in a room than Jung ever claimed to be. Not charm either, not even suffering, because everyone in this story suffers somewhere. Jung suffered, Freud suffered, and eventually you will too. The difference that actually matters is whether you turn and look at the thing following you, or whether you spend the rest of your life making absolutely certain it follows someone else instead. It's worth being honest about how bad it got before it got better. There were stretches where Jung himself wondered, in his own private notes, whether he was on the edge of what he'd later have called a psychosis in one of his own patients. He kept practicing medicine through it. He kept seeing patients, kept raising a family, kept functioning in daylight while something entirely different was happening to him after dark. That's not a small detail. It means the difference between him and the three profiles in this video was never that he had it together and they don't. He didn't have it together either, not for years. The difference is what he did with the part of himself that wasn't together. Jung had one word for the term: individuation. Becoming who you actually are, underneath the compromise you struck with the world in exchange for being liked by it. It's slow. It's not flattering. Nobody claps for you halfway through it, and there's no guarantee anyone will ever know you did the work at all. Jung himself kept the Red Book locked away from the public for the rest of his life, out of print until 2009, decades after he died. He didn't do it to be admired for doing it. He did it because the alternative was worse. The three faces of the dark triad are three separate ways of refusing that turn. Three exits taken instead of the one hallway Jung forced himself to walk down completely alone, in the dark, with no audience, for 16 years, with no promise that anyone would ever open the notebook after him. The narcissist problem was never too much confidence. That version gets repeated in comment sections because it fits in one sentence. And it's wrong. And it will get you nowhere the next time you're actually sitting across from one. Jung had a sharper word for what's happening underneath: inflation. The ego, the small ordinary I that gets up in the morning and forgets where it left its keys, fuses with something far larger than itself. In Jung's architecture, the self is the entire psyche, conscious and unconscious combined. The whole of what a person could ever become across an entire lifetime. It was never meant to be worn as a personality on a random Tuesday afternoon. It was meant to be approached slowly, in fragments, over decades, the way you'd approach something too large to hold all at once without being crushed under it. The narcissist wears it anyway, every single day, like a coat size for a much larger man, without ever once noticing that it doesn't fit. Listen for it in the first 5 minutes. Not arrogance. Arrogance is loud and cheap and clocks itself the second it walks through the door. Listen for the quieter thing instead, a near-total absence of ordinary human uncertainty. No, I might be wrong about this. No real curiosity about the answer to a question they just asked you. Only a pause shaped like curiosity, held exactly long enough for them to start talking again. Notice how fast your story becomes their story. You mention something difficult that happened to you, and inside 30 seconds they've located the version of it that happened to them, and theirs was worse, and now somehow you're the one nodding along. Listen for the sentence that gives them away completely, the one that sounds harmless the first time you hear it. Honestly, I don't think most people ever really get me the way you do. Or its cousin, I would have handled that so much better. Small sentences, almost throwaway. But they're doing the same job every time, quietly repositioning the entire conversation around the size of the person saying them. Then test something small on purpose. Not a real conflict, a preference, a restaurant, a film, an opinion that costs nothing to hold either way. Disagree gently about something that doesn't matter. A person with an intact ego adjusts or defends the point warmly, and the conversation moves on unbruised within the minute, forgotten by dinner. A person wearing an inflated one experiences that disagreement as an injury, however small the actual subject was. Watch their face in that exact second. Something in it recalibrates, fast, almost mechanically, like a system scanning itself for damage it genuinely cannot afford to have taken. Because you didn't just disagree with an opinion about a restaurant, you put a hairline crack in the only thing currently holding a God-sized hole together. Where the narcissist has too much behind the mask, the psychopath has arranged things so there's almost nothing left to find. Jung wrote about the shadow, everything in a person too ugly, too shameful, or too dangerous to keep in daylight. The shadow personifies everything the subject refuses to acknowledge about himself, and it doesn't vanish for being denied. It goes underground and quietly runs things from down there for the rest of a person's life, whether they ever look at it or not. For most people, the shadow produces friction, guilt, the 3 a.m. replay of something unkind you said and now wish you hadn't, a flinch when you catch your own face in a mirror after a bad day. That friction isn't weakness. It's the actual machinery of conscience doing precisely what it was built to do. In the profile clinical psychology now calls psychopathy, that friction is structurally reduced, sometimes close to absent altogether. Jung was specific that this is not the same thing as repression, and the distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. Repression takes effort, and effort leaves traces you can feel in a person. tension held somewhere in the body, a subject they quietly root around, a topic that makes their eyes move a half-second faster than the rest of the conversation. This is different. This is a room where the lights were never installed in the first place, and nobody inside is troubled by the dark, because darkness was never registered as a problem worth solving. In conversation, it shows up as a strange, frictionless ease, no hesitation before a claim that should require some. Charm delivered in the exact same warm register, whether the subject is small talk about the weather or something that would visibly cost most people to say out loud. Notice the speed of intimacy, a closeness that arrives faster than the relationship has earned, details shared too soon, plans made too fast, a familiarity that should take months compressed into a single sitting on a Tuesday night. Listen for the sentence that slides past almost too smoothly. That's rough. Anyway, the pivot happening before the weight of what you just said has had any time to land at all. Watch what happens when consequences enter the story. Tell them, even hypothetically, about being wronged by someone. Watch whether anything in their face registers the actual weight of it, or whether they're already 3 moves ahead, quietly calculating what your story means for them, specifically running the numbers behind a completely unbothered expression. There's a second, quieter marker worth learning, because it shows up even when everything else about the conversation feels warm and easy. Watch what they do with small permissions. Ask them not to do something small. Interrupt you less, put the phone down for the next 10 minutes, not tell a story you've already asked them twice not to repeat. Most people adjust, at least for a while, out of ordinary respect for the request. This profile tends to test the edge of it almost immediately, quietly, as if checking how much of the boundary is actually enforced before deciding whether it's real. The shadow in this person was never integrated. It was never permitted to cost anything in the first place. And so it never had to be looked at, not once, not ever. The manipulator is the strangest of the 3 because unlike the other 2, the mask isn't rigid, it's liquid. Jung wrote at length about a figure that shows up across nearly every mythology on record. Norse, West African, Native American, Greek, told and retold on separate continents that had no way of comparing notes with each other. He called it the trickster, a shape with no fixed shape that survives entirely by mirroring whatever it happens to be standing in front of at the time. The manipulator has made a home inside that archetype, rarely on purpose. And that's worth sitting with because most don't experience themselves as the villain of anything at all. They experience themselves as adaptable, perceptive, easy to get along with, good with people, exactly the way they'd phrase it if you asked them to describe their own best quality out loud. What they're actually running underneath the small talk is a constant, silent scan. What does this specific person in front of me want reflected back at them right now, in this exact conversation? In the first 5 minutes, the manipulator will often be the easiest person in the room to talk to, warmer than expected, attentive in a way that feels at first like being seen properly for the first time in a long while. That ease is the tell. Once you know precisely what to look for, trace how fast their opinions bend to match yours across the length of a single conversation. Trace how quickly they locate the exact compliment, the exact shared grievance, the exact old wound that opens a door faster than it should reasonably open for someone you met an hour ago. Listen for the sentence built to disarm you specifically. Wow, I feel like I can already tell we're the same kind of person. Ask yourself afterward what you actually learned about them. Often the honest answer is nothing, because the entire exchange was quietly built around learning about you, and you were too comfortable, too flattered, to notice which direction the questions had been flowing the whole time. A person with a stable persona takes time to earn trust, because trust is being built on something consistent underneath it. Something that holds its shape whether or not you happen to be watching that day. The trickster doesn't build anything at all. It reflects, and reflection is instant. Here's the part that's harder to hear than any of the three profiles above. None of this is a diagnosis. You are not a clinician standing in a consulting room, and 5 minutes was never enough to certify anything about another human being with real, defensible certainty. What 5 minutes is enough for is noticing the shape of the mask in front of you and asking yourself an honest question about why you recognized it so fast. What it is in your own history that trained you without your permission to catch it. Jung wrote it plainly, decades before any of this had an audience watching a screen at midnight. How can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? A person with no dark side, he argued, isn't pure. They're unfinished. That tightening in your chest 5 minutes into a conversation with someone new isn't paranoia dressed up as intuition. It's the oldest, most practiced part of you, running a pattern match against every mask you've ever had to survive in order to get this far. Trust it, not to convict anyone on the spot and not to turn every new person you meet into a suspect standing in a lineup. Just enough to slow down and actually look instead of performing politeness on autopilot the way most of us were trained to do from childhood, long before anyone told us it was allowed to look closer. The three faces you just learned to read all share one thing underneath them. They are what happens when a person refuses the work Jung did alone at a desk in Küsnacht with a red notebook and 16 years he didn't know at the very start he'd need. They found it easier to make someone else carry what they were never willing to look at in themselves. You don't have to be the one carrying it. Notice too that this cuts both ways. The same 3 chapters you just heard are also a mirror pointed back at you, and if something in one of them landed a little too close, that's not an accident either. Jung would have said that's exactly where the useful work starts, not where it ends. If you want to get better at this, at actually seeing people clearly, instead of just performing suspicion of them, and at seeing yourself with the same unflinching honesty you just learned to turn on strangers, stay close. There's more of this ahead.